In the golden radiance of the Boston Park Plaza Hotel, 300 distinguished guests gathered for the city's grandest charity gala. Amidst the laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses, every gaze turned away, avoiding the sight of Kate O'Hara, the young woman whose half-face bore the deep scar of fire, standing silently against the cold stone pillar in the corner of the room. Then suddenly, Michael Donovan, a humble waiter, set down his silver tray. He stepped forward, extended his hand toward Kate, inviting her to dance. Murmurs instantly spread across the hall, like a small ripple swelling into a storm. And at that exact moment, the band began to play. A melody so suffocatingly familiar. It was the very piece from the night the stage went up in flames 7 years ago. The piece Edward O'Hara, the powerful and cold CEO, had spent millions of dollars to erase from the world. Edward froze. Each step, each turn of his daughter on the dance floor was pulling out into the light the secrets he had buried for 7 long years. And what followed changed everything. This is the story of a single dance. The dance that shattered a father's pride and unleashed the truth the entire city of Boston had been waiting for. But to understand why that dance held such power, we must travel back 7 years in time, to that fateful night at the Boston Opera House, when the dream of a young dancer suddenly turned to ashes. 7 years ago, the Boston Opera House shone like a jewel in the heart of the city. It was the spring premiere of the Boston Youth Ballet, the most anticipated artistic event of the year. In the dressing room, 17-year-old Kate O'Hara stood before the large mirror. Her trembling hands tightened the ballet shoe ribbon one last time. Her name appeared on every poster. The press called her Boston's ballet angel. And tonight, she would take the lead role in Giselle. "Kate, are you ready?" Astrid Byrne, the artistic director at just 26, stepped in. In her anxious eyes, Astrid glanced briefly at the ceiling. All evening, she had smelled a strange burning odor, but the technicians reassured her it was only the air conditioning system. "Ready," Kate smiled, though her heartbeat pounded wildly. Out there, 800 spectators waited in anticipation. Among them was Edward O'Hara, her powerful father, who demanded absolute perfection from her. The door burst open. Colin Hayes, the 43-year-old stage engineer, rushed in with a pale face. "Astrid, the electrical system has a serious problem. We have to stop the performance immediately." "Stop?" Astrid was stunned. "Colin, you know that's impossible." "I've filed 3 reports already." Colin gripped Astrid's hand tightly. "The wiring is 15 years old, never replaced. The fire suppression system is shut off for maintenance and still unfinished. The emergency exits are blocked by props. Astrid, I beg you, don't let this performance go on." At that moment, Edward O'Hara appeared in the doorway, his black suit gleaming, his eyes cold. "What's going on here?" Colin swallowed hard and forced himself to speak. "Mr. O'Hara, about the safety issues." "Mr. Hayes." Edward cut him off, his voice like a blade. "We've invested $2 million in this performance. 800 spectators, including Boston's biggest sponsors, are waiting outside. I don't want to hear another word about safety." Kate looked at her father, then at Colin, the man who had cared for this stage for 20 years as if it were his own child. In his eyes, she saw real fear. "Dad, maybe we should—" "Kate!" Edward snapped at his daughter, his gaze sharp as ice. "Do you want to disgrace the O'Hara family? Do you want 800 people out there to believe Edward O'Hara's daughter is a coward, too weak to stand on stage?" The words pierced Kate's heart. For 17 years, She had lived only to make her father proud. Every bleeding hour of practice, every tear shed on the rehearsal floor, all of it for this moment. I will dance. Her voice trembled, but it was resolute. Colin Hayes stood frozen, watching the 17-year-old girl leave the dressing room with a look of despair. He had done everything he could. 10:45 p.m. The velvet curtain slowly rose. Kate stepped out beneath the spotlight, thunderous applause crashing over her. The sweet waltz melody floated from the orchestra, and her body began to move, graceful, fluid, like an angel taking flight. In the front row, Edward O'Hara smiled with pride. This was the moment he had always longed for. His daughter shining on the very stage he owned. But above, the 15-year-old electrical wires strained under overload. Heat built up. Tiny sparks began to flash like dangerous stars. 10:52 p.m. In the middle of Kate's most beautiful dance sequence, a loud explosion burst overhead. And then, the entire sky came crashing down. What fell was not glittering silk, but the blazing synthetic backdrop. Melting fabric, red-hot metal rained down like fire. Kate was in the center of the stage, but instead of running, her eyes suddenly caught Lucy Chen, a 12-year-old girl trapped under a fallen beam in the left corner. "Lucy!" Kate cried out and lunged toward her. That was the last moment of Kate O'Hara, the dancer. The massive burning backdrop fell just as she bent down to pull Lucy free. The molten synthetic material, like boiling acid, seared directly into the right half of Kate's face. Her scream of agony echoed through the theater, drowning out the panicked cries of 800 spectators stampeding for the exits. Edward O'Hara stood paralyzed in the front row. He watched his daughter, his only pride, collapse unconscious amid the sea of fire, half her face destroyed. And in his mind rang a chilling thought. I have killed my own daughter. Mass General Hospital, 3 a.m. Edward O'Hara stood leaning against the window frame of the waiting room. His expensive suit was now rumpled, smelling of smoke. His hands trembled, holding a phone that kept buzzing, but he could not bring himself to answer. He could not. Footsteps sounded hurriedly behind him. The corporation's legal team poured in. "Mr. O'Hara!" Marcus Webb, the 55-year-old chief counsel, gasped. "We need to talk immediately." "The press has—" "Be quiet." Edward's voice was hoarse, his eyes still fixed on the darkness outside the glass. "My daughter is in there. That's all the more reason we must act fast." Marcus opened his leather briefcase and pulled out a stack of files. "The Boston Globe is investigating. They have contacted Colin Hayes. If he discloses those warning reports—" Edward turned to face him, his gaze cutting like a knife. "What do you want?" "We need to control the narrative before it gets out of hand." Marcus's tone was firm. "Hayes must be persuaded to keep quiet. Those reports have to vanish. And as for the media, we will—" The emergency room door swung open. Dr. Gabriela Santos stepped out, her white coat stained with blood, her face exhausted. "Mr. O'Hara?" She glanced at the lawyers, then spoke seriously. "I need to speak with you alone." Edward nodded, signaling the lawyers to leave. Gabriela faced him directly. "Your daughter has passed the critical phase. But I must be honest, the burns on her face are severe. We have done everything we can, but they will leave permanent scarring. More importantly," she hesitated, "her hands were seriously injured. Fine motor function may be permanently affected. I cannot be sure she will be able to pursue ballet again." Edward felt the world spin. His daughter, the perfect child, his only pride. Now, Is there any way to fix it? He choked out. We will do everything possible. But you must prepare yourself. Edward did not hear the rest. He turned away and caught sight of Marcus Webb's eyes glinting down the corridor. Mr. O'Hara, Marcus said in a low voice, this could be an opportunity. Edward's face darkened. What opportunity? If Kate cannot dance anymore, her past achievements can be reframed as fading because of injury. We can shape the story. An unforeseeable accident, no one at fault. That is the safest direction. Edward stared at Marcus for a long time. Then he spoke softly, ice in his words. Do what needs to be done. 6 months later. Kate sat before the mirror in her private room. The right half of her face was still bandaged. Physical therapy sessions with Nora Kaplan had helped her regain some movement in her hands, but the pain felt like fire beneath the skin. She tried to lift her arm, struggling through a simple ballet movement. A sharp pain shot through her, and she burst into tears. Kate? Astrid Barnes stood in the doorway, her eyes rimmed red. 6 months had aged her by years. Do you want to go out in the garden for some air? It's a beautiful day today. No. Kate shook her head without turning. I don't want anyone to see me. You can't hide forever like this. Astrid choked. Why not? Kate spun around, tears streaming. Do you know what my father told the press? That the fire was an unforeseeable accident. That Colin Hayes did everything he could. That I was only a tragic victim, and that the family would overcome adversity. Astrid fell silent. She knew the truth. Colin had accepted a huge settlement from Edward O'Hara to keep quiet. The warning reports had vanished. The official investigation concluded an accident with no one at fault. But you know the truth, Kate sobbed. My father chose money over his daughter's life. And now he can't look at me without seeing his own guilt. Kate, Astrid trembled. My father is ashamed of me, Astrid. Ashamed of this face, ashamed of hands that can no longer dance, ashamed because I am a living reminder of that fateful night. Kate rose and stepped close to the mirror, staring at herself. And I am ashamed of myself, too. 7 years later. Kate's room in the O'Hara mansion was like a closed world. Everything she needed was brought to her. Books, a computer, meals served by servants. Heavy curtains were drawn tight, allowing no light in. Outside the door, Edward stood silently, holding an invitation to the charity gala at the Boston Park Plaza. Kate, would you like to come down for dinner? I'm hosting a gala tonight. Silence. Kate, I don't want to go anywhere, Father. Her voice sounded hoarse from 7 years of little conversation. Edward pressed his forehead to the wooden door. For 7 years, he had rebuilt his financial empire, becoming one of Boston's most powerful men. But the distance between him and his daughter remained irredeemable. Daughter, I know I... His voice broke. The word sorry stuck in his throat. To admit wrongdoing was to accept guilt, and Edward O'Hara had never allowed himself to admit that. I will go alone. Edward turned his back and left, leaving Kate in the dark. 7 years of running. 7 years waiting for a miracle she no longer believed would come. Something that could be called salvation. Boston, early morning, inside a small apartment in the South End. Michael Donovan woke at 5:30 as usual, without an alarm. In the corner of the room, Amanda's old piano sat silent, still as a scar of memory. Daddy! 7-year-old Hannah Donovan, hair tousled, came bursting out of her bedroom, clutching a small music box. I did it! I learned Mommy's song. The girl wound the music box. Familiar notes drifted out. The waltz Amanda used to sing as a lullaby before illness stole her voice and her final breath. Michael knelt down, wrapping his daughter in his arms. For the past 3 years since Amanda's passing, Hannah had been the only reason holding him to life. Beautiful, sweetheart. Mommy would be so proud. Michael kissed her forehead. Now get ready for school. I have to leave early for work today. You're working at the big hotel today, right? Hannah's eyes widened. Are there princesses there, Daddy? Michael smiled sadly. Not princesses, love. Just people with too much money. Hearing Hannah sing Amanda's song, Michael's memories flooded back. A frigid winter afternoon at Mass General Hospital, room 314. Amanda lay in the hospital bed, her face pale but her smile warm. Michael sat beside her, gripping her hand tightly. 4-year-old Hannah sat nearby, enchanted with the little music box. Michael, Amanda whispered weakly, do you remember the first time we met? Michael nodded, tears streaming. It had been in a small cafe in Cambridge. Amanda was reading an astronomy book while he played piano for tips to cover tuition. You played for 2 hours straight. Amanda smiled faintly. Then I walked up and told you, you play well, but without feeling. Michael let out a choked laugh. And you taught me how to play with my heart. Now you must teach Hannah that. Amanda's gaze drifted to her daughter, her trembling finger brushing the music box. Music is more than sound. It's how we tell our story. That night, Amanda was gone. She left Michael with a 4-year-old daughter and a broken musical dream. Just a week later, he received an invitation to tour with the Boston Jazz Quartet, the opportunity he had waited for over 10 years. But Michael tore the letter apart. He chose to stay. He chose to be a father. Back to the present. Boston Park Plaza Hotel. Michael pushed a service cart down the luxurious corridors, the crystal lights glinting across his hair. For 2 years he had worked here, ever since he could no longer afford to rent a piano studio. Michael! Siobhan Donovan, his younger sister, called from the kitchen. Big gala tonight. You'll be serving the ground floor. And hey, she lowered her voice, do you know who's coming? No. Who? Edward O'Hara. And his daughter Michael froze for a moment. In 3 years living in Boston, he had heard whispers about Kate O'Hara. Once the pride of the city, now a tragic legend few dared mention aloud. They say she has never appeared in public, Michael said quietly. Exactly. 7 years, Siobhan sighed. It's heartbreaking. She was so beautiful, so talented. Now she's what? Michael pressed. Siobhan's eyes grew distant. Our family used to work for the Boston Opera House, that fire night. Michael, there were things that didn't add up. A lot of things, meanwhile. At the O'Hara mansion. Kate stood before her wardrobe, staring at the dark blue dress Edward had sent up. The first 17 years of her life had been full of vibrant colors. Pink, yellow, sparkling rehearsal outfits. The 7 years since had been only black, gray, and shadow. Her hand touched the right side of her face, where the scars had healed but never vanished. Dr. Gabriela Santos had done all she could, but no miracle could erase what the fire had carved into her skin. Knock, knock. Kate, Edward's voice came through the door. Are you ready? The car is here. Kate looked at herself in the mirror. Her blonde hair fell to cover half her face, heavy makeup softening the scar. She had learned to stand at an angle, to walk in shadow, to avoid direct eyes. Why do you want me to go tonight? She asked through the door. Edward hesitated. In truth, Professor Ruth Carlin, chairwoman of the board, had questioned Kate's mysterious absence from every event. Rumors spread that she had died, that she was locked away, even institutionalized. Edward needed to prove to investors that Kate was still alive, still the perfect daughter in the public's eye. "Because I want everyone to see how beautiful and strong my daughter is," Edward replied, though even he did not believe his own words. Kate opened the door. She wore the long dark blue gown, her hair veiling half her face. In the dim light, she was still beautiful, fragile, shattered, yet captivating. Edward's chest tightened as he looked at her. For a fleeting moment, he saw again the radiant 17-year-old beneath the stage lights. "I'm ready," Kate said, her voice low and steady. Father and daughter entered the limousine. All the way to the Boston Park Plaza, they sat in silence. Edward buried in financial reports, Kate gazing through the window at a Boston that had changed during her 7 years of disappearance from the world. Neither of them knew. Tonight would be the night everything changed. The night when the truth would finally be set free. Boston Park Plaza Hotel, 7:30 p.m. Brilliant chandeliers poured down on the grand hall like a waterfall of light, as streams of guests walked the red carpet to the sound of soft music. Michael Donovan stood by the bar, arranging trays of champagne, his eyes following the dazzling parade of Boston's elite. In the distance, Dante Harrington, the 40-year-old PR director with a flawless smile, coordinated the media team. In Vivian North's hand, a phone streamed live, its lens sweeping across the ballroom. "Hello, everyone. I'm Vivian North, and this is Boston's most spectacular charity gala," she narrated sweetly to more than 500,000 viewers. Near the stage, Serena Whitlow clutched her tablet tightly, scanning every detail like a general surveying the battlefield. Finn O'Connell wiped sweat from his forehead as he prepared to lead the orchestra. "Remember to avoid the restricted pieces," Serena instructed, her tone firm. "Especially, no one is permitted to touch any melody from the Boston Opera House performance in 2017. Finn nodded, though his chest tightened. To be an artist and censor yourself, was that still art? By about 8:15, murmurs rippled through the hall. From the main entrance, Edward O'Hara strode in, his tailored black suit radiating the presence of a king at a ball. But the eyes of the crowd were not on him. They were fixed on the woman walking behind. Kate O'Hara appeared like a figure from a sorrowful dream. A dark blue gown hugged her slender frame, blonde hair veiled half her face, blue eyes lowered, avoiding every gaze. "My God, is that Kate O'Hara?" a woman whispered. "I thought she was dead. Look, her face." Each whisper pierced Kate like a knife in the back. She hurried forward, following her father to the VIP section, then slipped into a dark corner. From the bar, Michael saw it all. His heart swayed. Not because of beauty, though Kate still carried a fragile, broken allure, but because of the way she tried to make herself invisible. The slight tremor of her shoulders each time someone passed. He recognized it. Hannah had done the same after Amanda's death, shrinking herself, trying to become air to escape the weight of pitying eyes. When the clock neared 8:45, Edward O'Hara took the stage. His voice rang through the microphone across the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am Edward O'Hara, CEO of O'Hara Holdings. Welcome to our annual charity gala." He began with familiar lines about social responsibility and community contributions. Then his eyes drifted down, landing on Kate, hunched in the far corner. "In business, as in life," Edward continued, his tone subtly shifting, "we must always strive for perfection. O'Hara Holdings exists because of the highest standards. Each word, perfection, standards, stabbed at Kate's heart. For 7 years, she had been the living proof of imperfection her father wished buried. And sometimes, what fails to meet the standard must be concealed to protect the greater image. The words struck like a slap. Publicly, her father had turned his daughter's existence into something shameful. Michael, standing nearby, saw Kate grip her champagne glass until her knuckles turned white. A tear glistened at the corner of her blue eye. At 9 o'clock sharp, Edward concluded his speech. And now, please enjoy the music. On the conductor's podium, Finn O'Connell bent over the sheet music. Amid Serena's official playlist, there was a handwritten page. The handwriting was unmistakable. Astrid Byrne. It was the very waltz from that night at the Boston Opera House 7 years ago. Finn looked up. Across the crowd, Kate trembled, lost among the sea of people. His heart clenched. His entire life he had pursued art, but for years he had played only safe music to please the powerful. Now was the moment to choose. Stay silent, or let the music speak the truth. He raised his hand and counted. The first notes rose, the fateful waltz. Edward froze, as if struck by lightning. This was the melody he had spent millions to erase from the city's memory. In the corner, Kate heard it, and her whole body shook. It was the last piece she had danced to with unbroken legs, with a face untouched by fire. Michael saw her about to shatter. Without a thought, he set his tray of champagne on the nearest table and walked toward Kate. In the stunned silence of the ballroom, the waiter extended his hand to the billionaire's daughter. "Forgive me," Michael whispered, "just for Kate. But I think you shouldn't have to dance alone." Kate looked up. For the first time in 7 years, she met the eyes of a stranger. In Michael's gaze she found no pity, no revulsion, only understanding of pain, of loss, and of loneliness. I don't know how to dance anymore," Kate choked. "Then we'll learn again." Michael smiled, his hand still patiently outstretched. One step at a time. And Kate, after 7 years of hiding, gently placed her hand in his. The hall held its breath. And the night at the Boston Park Plaza was about to witness a miracle. When Kate placed her hand in Michael's, a wave of whispers rippled across the hall like water crashing against stone. More than 300 guests, the most powerful figures in Boston, fell silent, their eyes fixed on the unbelievable sight before them. In the dazzling glow of the Boston Park Plaza, Michael slowly led Kate onto the dance floor. The chandeliers cast down their light, exposing the scars running across half her face. But this time, Kate did not bow her head in hiding. She lifted her gaze, looking straight into Michael's eyes. "I'm afraid." Her voice trembled. "So am I," Michael replied, his warm hand resting at her waist. "But sometimes we have to dance, even when we're still afraid." The music began. A slow waltz, mournful like a stifled cry. On the podium, Finn O'Connell conducted with tearful eyes, remembering the years when he still believed music could move the world. Kate tried to step. 7 years without training made her legs stiff, every movement shaking as if ready to break. Michael leaned close, whispering, "Don't think about technique. Listen to the music. Let your heart lead the way." Step by step, Kate's body began to remember. Muscles remembered, bones remembered, and her heart remembered too. After 15 years of rigorous training, her body still held the instinct, waiting to be awakened. In the front row, Edward O'Hara stood frozen, his face ashen. Dante Harrington frantically tapped on his phone, trying to control the situation. But it was too late. Vivian North had already turned her live stream camera toward the dance floor. "My God, do you see this?" she whispered into the mic. "Kate O'Hara, the girl who vanished for 7 years, is dancing with a waiter." The music swelled, and with it, something inside Kate awakened. It was no longer the flawless technique of her past, but something deeper, the pure joy of dancing. "You're smiling," Michael murmured in surprise. Kate touched her lips lightly. Yes, for the first time in 7 years, she was truly smiling. At the far end of the hall, Professor Ruth Carlin, elegant silver hair, eyes sharp as a blade, stood beside Cornelius Pratt, an elderly sponsor. "Cornelius, do you notice anything strange?" she said quietly. "What do you mean, Ruth?" "Look at Edward O'Hara. A father watching his daughter smile after 7 years of hell. He should be happy, shouldn't he?" Cornelius glanced at Edward, saw him clenching both fists, his face like ash. Not joy, but fear. On the dance floor, Kate and Michael moved in astonishing harmony. Michael was no professional dancer, but he had what her former partners never had. He danced with his heart, not with his ego. Kate's blonde hair flew as she spun. The scars on her face, instead of marks of shame, now became symbols of strength. In the splendid light, she let the gaze of the entire room fall fully upon her. Gasps spread across the hall. Not because of perfect beauty, but because of the beauty of courage. In the back row, Colin Hayes stood beside Astrid Byrne. His face was drenched in sweat, his hand trembling over the pocket holding a stack of documents. "Astrid, we have to do something." "I already did," Astrid answered, her eyes on Finn, the one conducting the forbidden piece. "But now, you must have the courage to tell the truth." Colin swallowed hard, heart pounding. In his pocket was everything. Emails, safety reports, proof that Edward had slashed safety budgets to increase profits. The music reached its climax. Kate spun, performing a sequence of movements thought lost forever. Not perfect, but brimming with emotion. Edward could take no more. He rushed to the microphone, his voice roaring across the hall, "Stop! Stop this at once!" But the music kept playing. Finn O'Connell looked at Serena Whitlow. She stood frozen, her tablet trembling in her hands. Finn understood, and lifted his baton. The orchestra played on. Edward pointed, shouting, "Hayes! You have no right—" Kate stopped dancing. She turned to face her father directly. "Father, I am dancing. You are disgracing the family. You're making all of us—" Edward halted, realizing what he had just said in front of hundreds of witnesses and a live stream camera broadcasting to tens of thousands. "Making all of us what, Father?" Kate stepped forward, for the first time in 7 years revealing her full face. "Ashamed? Like you've been ashamed of me for 7 years?" The hall held its breath. Only the hum of the air conditioning and the pounding of hearts filled the silence. "Kate!" Edward's voice shook. "No, Father. For 7 years I stayed silent so you could keep hiding. But tonight I will speak." Kate turned toward the hall, her voice clear, each word cutting through the silence like a blade. "Do you want to know the truth about the night the Boston Opera House burned?" And that was the moment everything would change. Boston Park Plaza, 9:07 p.m. The entire hall was silent. 300 guests held their breath. On Vivian North's phone screen, the live stream audience surged, crossing 50,000. Beneath the glittering chandeliers, Kate O'Hara stood tall, her scarred face revealed for the first time. After 7 years, she no longer bowed before the stares of the crowd. "The truth," Kate began, her voice trembling but resolute, "is that my father knew about the dangers at the Boston Opera House." Edward O'Hara jolted, as if struck by lightning. "Kate, you don't know what you're saying." "My father," Kate's voice rang clearer, "ignored 3 requests from Mr. Colin Hayes to upgrade the safety systems. He personally ordered the fire suppression system shut down to save maintenance costs. He approved blocking the emergency exits with stage props." Gasps spread violently. In the front row, Professor Ruth Carlin and Cornelius Pratt exchanged sharp glances. The long whispered rumors were being confirmed. "And when I was injured," Kate's voice broke, tears streaming down her cheeks, "he did not think of saving me. He only thought of burying the truth." From the back of the hall, a man's voice rang out, "Enough!" Colin Hayes stepped forward, his face lined with guilt, clutching a thick folder in his hands. "I can no longer remain silent. I am Colin Hayes, chief engineer of the Boston Opera House in 2017. And I have the evidence." He raised the folder high, his voice trembling yet clear. "On August 15th, 2017, I emailed Edward O'Hara, warning that the wiring was dangerously outdated. He replied, 'Costs too high. Postpone until after the season.' On September 2nd, I warned that the fire suppression system was disabled. He replied, 'Not necessary for a few shows.' On September 20th, I filed my final report, stating that if not addressed, disaster was imminent. That email was erased from the company's server, but I kept a copy. All with Edward O'Hara's digital signature, the hall erupted. Edward's face turned chalk white, his voice grinding through the microphone. These are forged documents. Hayes has a personal vendetta." But at that moment, Astrid Byrne stepped forward, holding up a USB drive. "I have video." Security cameras from that night show Edward O'Hara arriving at the theater at 11:30, after the fire, with his lawyer and his men. They took every document from Colin's office before the police even arrived. Vivian North, electrified, swung her camera toward Astrid. "We are broadcasting live to 50,000 people. This is the breaking story of the year," Edward screamed, his voice broken, frantic. "They are all lies. They're conspiring against me. Kate," he pointed straight at his daughter, "you've been manipulated. You don't remember that night clearly." "I remember perfectly well, Father." Kate stepped closer, her voice like a knife cutting through the silence. "I remember you arriving at the hospital with lawyers before the doctors. I remember you telling the press it was an unforeseeable accident. I remember you paying Colin to keep quiet." Edward's hand shook, raised toward her. "Kate, don't—" "But what I remember most," Kate cut him off, her eyes blazing, "is you telling me this face was your failure, that every time you looked at me, you saw your business mistake." The hall exploded. Some stormed out. Others raised phones to record every moment. The entire ballroom had turned into a public courtroom. Edward stood rooted in place. For the first time in his life, he realized he had lost everything: his reputation, his company, and his only daughter. "Kate," his voice cracked, "I never meant—" "7 years, Father." Kate's tears streamed, yet her head remained high. 7 years I lived like a prisoner in my own house. 7 years I believed I was a burden, a disgrace. 7 years I asked myself why the only father I had could not love me. With this face. Michael stepped forward, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. Kate drew a deep breath. "But now I understand. It wasn't because I was shameful. It was because every time you saw me, you saw your own guilt." Professor Ruth Carlin rose from the front row, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. Edward O'Hara. As chair of the board, I hereby declare you suspended from all positions at O'Hara Holdings effective immediately, pending investigation. Cornelius Pratt nodded firmly. The investors will withdraw at once. Mr. O'Hara, your empire has fallen, Dante Harrington vanished, no doubt calling the crisis team. Serena Whitlow stood frozen, her tablet slipping from her hands and shattering on the floor. Amid the chaos, Kate turned to Michael, her eyes softening. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the courage to dance. Michael smiled. Thank you. For showing me that sometimes we must tear down in order to rebuild. From the back of the room, a small voice rang out. You dance so beautifully. You look like a real princess. 7-year-old Hannah Donovan ran forward, throwing her arms around Kate. She had been watching it all from the kitchen door. Kate knelt, embracing the child. And for the first time in 7 years, she felt loved, without condition. Amid the ruins of an empire built on lies, Kate O'Hara finally found what she had lost long ago. The freedom to be herself. 3 days after the gala, at the newsroom of the Boston Globe, Patrick Doyle sat at his computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. On the screen, the headline blazed, The Truth Behind the Boston Opera House Fire. 7 years of buried guilt. The live stream from the gala had surpassed 5 million views in just 72 hours. The hashtag Justice for Kate ranked #1 across every social media platform. But Patrick knew this was not just the story of a single dancer. Doyle, the editor-in-chief's voice called from the corner office, we need more on the other victims. I hear Kate O'Hara wasn't the only one the fire affected. Patrick reopened the investigation files, eyes scanning the words he had been chasing for 3 days. Lucy Chen, the 12-year-old girl Kate saved, now 19, a Harvard medical student. Her legs were permanently injured, her dream of becoming a dancer gone. Marcus Webb, a young male dancer, hands severely burned, forced to abandon the stage, now working as an office clerk. 8 stage technicians suffered minor injuries, and dozens of other families affected indirectly. Patrick typed into his article, Edward O'Hara did not only destroy his daughter's life, he buried an entire generation of Boston's young artists at the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. Ada May Lynn, 39, sat across from Colin Hayes and Astrid Byrne. Her desk overflowed with documents. Mr. Hayes, she said sternly, 7 years of silence could be considered suppression of evidence. Colin lowered his head, voice heavy. I understand. I was wrong. I let money blind my conscience. Maylin paused her pen, staring directly at him. But the fact that you came forward now, with all the evidence, will be taken into account at trial. Astrid clasped Colin's hand tightly. We will fully cooperate. Kate, and all the other victims, they deserve justice. 3 days after the gala, in a small room at Massachusetts General Hospital, Dr. Walter Briggs sat across from Edward O'Hara. The man once the symbol of Boston's power now looked decades older. His hair was gray and unkempt, his shoulders hunched, his eyes empty. Edward, the doctor began gently, do you want to talk about how you feel? I've lost everything, Edward whispered. The company, reputation, money. But worst of all, I lost my daughter. How do you think Kate feels now? Edward stayed silent for a long time, then broke down in tears for the first time in 7 years. She's free. Free from me, Dr. Briggs noted. This is the first step. Admitting guilt is the first step toward redemption. But the road is long. 1 week later, in East Boston, Kate stood before an old building where Eveline March, 52, had opened a small dance school for underprivileged children. "Are you sure?" Eveline asked, eyeing her. "The media is still chasing you. This may not be a quiet place." Kate looked around the studio. Faded mirrors, chipped wooden bars, scratched floorboards. Nothing like the grand rehearsal rooms she once knew. "This is exactly where I need to be," Kate smiled, her first natural smile in 7 years. The door burst open. A group of children rushed in, one with a prosthetic leg, one with a hearing aid, one with a large birthmark on her face. Children's Society called imperfect. "Are you our new teacher?" An 8-year-old girl with a prosthetic leg ran up. Kate knelt to meet her eyes. "Do you want to learn?" "But I only have one leg." "And you think that stops you from dancing?" The girl shook her head fiercely. Kate smiled. "Then let's begin. Everyone can dance. They just need to find their own dance." That same afternoon, at Michael's apartment, he was playing piano, Hannah sitting beside him with her mother's old music box. The doorbell rang. Michael opened it, surprised to see Kate holding a bouquet of white lilies. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For giving me the courage to dance." "And—" Kate paused, drawing a deep breath. "For seeing me. Truly seeing me." Hannah darted forward, hugging Kate tightly. "Miss Kate, I saw your video online. You're famous." Kate laughed, hugging the girl back. "Not famous, Hannah. Just free." Michael saw a new light in Kate's eyes, a light that hadn't been there on gala night. "Would you like to stay for dinner?" Hannah just learned a new song. Kate smiled. "I'd love to." 3 months later, at the first trial, Edward O'Hara sat at the defendant's table. No longer a powerful CEO, only a broken man. O'Hara Holdings had collapsed, its assets liquidated to compensate victims. Kate stepped onto the witness stand, Michael squeezing her hand in support. She looked directly at her father. "I do not stand here for revenge. I stand here to ensure that no other child will endure what I did, that no other father will choose money over his child's life." Edward bowed his head, tears falling. "But I also want to say," Kate lifted her chin, "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to be free of hatred." That evening, at the East Boston Dance Academy, Kate taught her last class of the day. Children danced around her, telling stories through their imperfect bodies. Michael sat at the piano, playing a melody Amanda once composed, now ringing with hope. "Remember this," Kate said, her eyes glowing. "We don't dance to be perfect. We dance to tell our story." Hannah raised her hand. "Miss Kate, if we dance with our scars, will people laugh?" Kate knelt, looking her straight in the eyes. "Hannah, scars are not shameful. They are proof that we lived, that we fought, and that we survived. They make us unique and strong." She opened her arms wide. "Now, let's dance. Not perfect, but true." In the small room, under the flickering yellow light, Kate O'Hara finally found what she had searched for through 7 long years: a place to exist, with her scars, her flaws, and her authentic beauty. 6 months later, at Suffolk County Jail, Edward O'Hara sat in the visitation room, his wrinkled orange jumpsuit a far cry from the perfect suits of his past. 3 days a week, he met with Dr. Briggs. 2 days he worked in the library, and the rest he spent writing letters he never sent. But today was different. The door opened. Kate walked in. Her face was no longer hidden, no longer lowered. A light blue sweater, her hair tied neatly back, a book in her hand. "Kate," Edward rasped, standing, "you came to visit me." "I came to say goodbye." Kate sat across from him. "I'm moving away." Edward's chest clenched. Moving where? San Francisco. Michael got a position at the Conservatory of Music. Hannah will transfer schools. And I... Kate smiled softly. I'll open a dance studio for special children. Do you regret it? Kate asked, her tone not hateful, only curious. Edward stayed silent for a long time. 6 months in prison had stripped him of every illusion. Only bare truth remained. I regret not protecting you, he finally said, but I do not regret losing everything, because if I hadn't lost it all, I would never have woken up. Kate nodded. Dr. Briggs says you're making progress. Can you forgive me? Kate met her father's eyes, for the first time in her life without fear. I already forgave you, Father. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean I'll stay so you can redeem yourself. She set the book on the table, a psychology volume filled with bookmarks. For you. I marked the parts about loving without controlling, about lifting without smothering. Edward lifted the book, his hands trembling. Will you be happy? I am happy, Father. For the first time in my life, 2 weeks later, at Logan Airport, Boston. Michael pushed the luggage cart, Hannah clutched her mother's music box, and Kate carried one small suitcase and one big dream. Daddy, Hannah looked up. Are there beaches in San Francisco? There are, Michael smiled. And tall hills, too. Will Miss Kate teach me to dance on the beach? Of course, Kate laughed. We'll dance everywhere. Astrid Barn hurried up, out of breath. Kate! Wait. She handed over an envelope. From the former students of the Boston Opera House. They heard you're leaving, so... Kate opened it. Inside was a large check and a handwritten letter. Dear Miss Kate, we raised this to support your new studio in San Francisco. Not out of pity, but out of respect. You taught us that art isn't about being perfect, but about being true. Lucy Chen and fellow colleagues. Kate hugged Astrid tightly, tears of joy welling in her eyes. San Francisco, 3 months later. Movement and Magic Studio stood in a renovated old building near Golden Gate Park. The rehearsal hall flooded with natural light, mirrors reflecting without concealing. Kate taught her first class, 15 children, each with something different. Disabilities, birth defects, scars from accidents, illness. Today we learn about beauty, Kate began. Not the kind on magazines or TV, but the beauty of being yourself. Tommy, a boy in a wheelchair, had already become a standout, creating his own style, using his chair and hands as instruments. Miss Kate? Asked a little girl with a birthmark across half her face. If we perform, will people accept us? Kate knelt to eye level. Emma, do you know? When you truly love yourself, it's hard for others to do anything but love you too. That evening, in a small apartment near the ocean, Michael played the piano, no longer Amanda's mournful pieces, but a new melody filled with hope. Hannah slept soundly in her own room, the safe sleep of a loved child. Kate sat beside the piano, reviewing lesson plans. Do you regret leaving Boston? She asked. Michael paused, looking out at the Pacific shimmering in moonlight. I've never felt more in the right place than I do now. Not because of the city, but because of the person beside me. Kate placed her hand over his. Both bore scars, his of loss, hers of fire. But from those broken pieces, they were building something beautiful. Michael, Kate whispered, will you marry me? Michael froze. Not the proposal he had imagined. But with Kate, everything was always different, and beautiful in its own way. Yes, he smiled. But on one condition. What condition? Hannah has to be the bridesmaid. Kate laughed freely, a laugh unhidden at last. Of course! 1 year later, at the San Francisco Community Center. The first performance of Movement and Magic Studio. A small stage, simple lights, but an atmosphere brimming with love. 15 children stepped out, each a story, a wound, a hope. They did not dance perfectly. They danced truthfully. Kate stood at the wings, ready to support. Michael played piano from the pit. Hannah clapped wildly. And in the very last row, a quiet figure. Edward O'Hara. Recently released on parole, he had flown from Boston not for forgiveness, but simply to witness. In the finale, everyone danced together. Tommy shone on his wheelchair like a prince. Emma, with her birthmark, sparkled like a fairy. The hall rose in applause, not for perfection, but for courage. Kate embraced each child. Do you see? This is true beauty. Not perfect, but honest. She looked out. Edward sat there, tears streaming down his gaunt face. For the first time in years, Kate nodded at her father. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, but acknowledgement of his presence. Edward placed his hand on his chest, bowing his head. A silent thank you for seeing his daughter happy. Nightfall, on the sands of Ocean Beach. Kate and Michael walked hand in hand along the surf, Hannah racing ahead, collecting seashells. Do you regret not becoming the professional dancer you once dreamed of? Michael asked. Kate looked out at the ocean. No two waves alike, each beautiful in its own way. I became the dancer I was meant to be. Not perfect, but true. Hannah ran back, holding up a crooked shell. Daddy, Miss Kate, look. This shell is broken, but still beautiful. Kate took it, moonlight glinting through the cracks like stars. You're right, Hannah, she smiled. Sometimes the broken things are the most beautiful. She lifted her eyes to the starry sky, grateful for everything that had brought her here. Pain, loss, and unexpected miracles. At last, Kate O'Hara understood the greatest lesson. Happiness is not being perfect. Happiness is embracing all that we are, and dancing with life itself. Beneath the San Francisco sky, with scars still visible but her smile brighter than ever, she kept dancing. Not perfect, but free. Some stories end with happily ever after. This one ends with something better. They lived truthfully ever after. With all the scars, flaws, and the honest beauty of life. If you believe that scars don't make us less beautiful, but prove our strength and survival, give this story a like. And if you believe truth matters more than perfection, hit subscribe to True Tale Time now, so you won't miss the journeys where justice, courage, and love always find their voice. Share this video so that anyone who ever felt not enough will know. They are worthy of love, whole, with everything that makes them who they are. See you in the next story, where every crack shines with light, and every dance is a declaration that we are still here, and we are still dancing.